Good morning to you. Mark Suttle, HurricaneTrack.com here. It is now Thursday. I had to think about it for a second. I really did. The days run together when you're doing this. Thursday, the 31st, last day of August, 2023. I'm in Orlando, southwest side again. I stay over here often after events in Florida. And boy, what a few days it has been. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the impacts that we captured from Idalia. I'm going to show you that. And then we need to look at what is next coming up. The season's still very, very active. More activity in the pipeline. Just want to keep you aware and on top of things. That's the most important part of this, is having as much advance notice as possible. And hopefully we can take action when needed, when that advance notice turns into something like what we saw yesterday. All right? So first of all, let's take a look at the National Hurricane Center homepage. Still pretty busy out there. There's Tropical Storm Idalia off the North Carolina coast. Schools are canceled up there. Flooding has occurred. Some wind issues, nothing major, but a disruptive, minor impact event for the Carolinas and Georgia. And, of course, after leaving, quite a big storm surge and some wind damage here in Florida yesterday. And Idalia forecast to head on out into the open Atlantic there. And we can look at it on this graphic. And it's going to kind of mill around out here for several days. This is going to be with us for quite a while, gradually racking up what we call the ACE score, the ACE points, accumulated cyclone energy. And then, of course, we have Franklin, which is also doing just that. And we'll take a look at the ACE score, what it's doing tomorrow. We'll talk more about that. And then we have the remnants of Gert out here that might try to make a comeback. We'll see. We're going to have very short-lived Jose out here as well, 40-mile-per-hour tropical storm. And then we have another area out here trying to develop. I think this goes on to become another tropical storm. But the good news, all these systems will be moving away from land, in the case of Idalia, of course, or are already out over the open Atlantic. However, Franklin out here still generating swells that will be emanating out towards the coastline still, and that is a hazard to keep in mind. I have not kept up with much news outside of Idalia, and hopefully we have not seen any injuries or deaths or anything like that related to swells from Franklin. You know, just understanding tropical cyclones and what they are capable of, the full picture, that is a big part of my mission here, and it's been that way ever since I started this, all the way back even before internet times, or at least the way it is now. Even in the mid-90s, my earliest projects were about awareness and education and really wrapping your brain around what tropical cyclones can do, depressions, storms, hurricanes. And so just understanding all of that and putting some effort into making yourself understand is very important. Got a lot of distractions in the world. You don't want the weather to sneak up on you. So let me show you a little bit of what we captured with our remote cams. We're going to be digging through this for a while. We have wind data and pressure data that we need to analyze and take a look at. I'm going to share that with our crowdfunding folks first over on Patreon. First of all, they invested in it to make it happen. And secondly, just to get an idea of, do we think this is accurate? We're going to crowdsource, a decision, come to a consensus. Do we believe this wind data is accurate? It's very important before we publish anything or show it at conferences or what have you. So let's take a look at some videos real quick. This is from inside the Tiki Bar down there at Cedar Key. We were very fortunate to meet the owner, and let's mute the audio here, be helpful. So this is real-time video. This is overnight, Tuesday night, I think it was, before this storm surge came in. As I scroll through, you see what happens. The lights go out, and then we get towards the dawn. The sun comes up there, and all the power goes out. And then the sun comes up, see right here, and that's the Gulf out there, the marshy areas, the mangroves or whatever it is out there. There's a dock, and this camera was put up on a piano that's right behind the bar on a huge steel box or something like that. But you can see the surge comes into the bar, and of course that means it's all the way out to Highway 24. We did have a GoPro camera that is out there on the other side, like in front of this where the street is, and that was looking down. They have some hotel rooms there, or motel rooms, whatever you call it. But yeah, that's the storm surge inside. We've always wanted to do something like this to show people how storm surge does what it does. You know, we see the aftermath so many times, but how does it work? What does it look like? What does it sound like? And this is it. And so we really appreciate Scott and his friends and family there, all the people we met working with us to allow us to do this. He was interviewed, I believe, on Fox News Channel about this, and I'm going to see him, I think, later today. All right, and then the other one, and this is really, really important here, something that we've learned, all these hurricane events, we'll try to learn something. So there's our anemometer over there on the left, but notice on the river shot that it was flowing. Let's just start this over because I want to make sure I point this out. Now the river is flowing from right to left. You know, it's going back out towards the Gulf there early in the morning, but then the surge comes up the Steinhatchee. That's what this is, Steinhatchee River, and that is not time lapse. That is real time video of the water. I mean, look at that car going by. There you go. Now you know that's not time lapse. That is absolutely vicious. I mean, that surge of water, I don't know if we've ever seen anything quite like this on the Florida coastline, maybe last year during Ian. And just look at all the damage that's going on. Boats get dislodged and all kinds of debris flowing up river there, surging all the way inland. And where this spread out and where it ended up, man, that's going to be incredible to see what the surge values were. Look at this. I mean, my goodness, the ability to be able to capture stuff like this. And it's interesting to watch, but it's also going to be very helpful to share with coastal engineers, building not just coastal engineers, but just regular construction engineers, people that understand coastal processes. And maybe there's a way to do this better and keep things, what do you do? Just avoid the water? Well, we can't do that, but maybe there's a smarter way to do things. Look at that. That boat is still in the boathouse. Just absolutely incredible here. And we were able to capture this from the remote cam that was with the anemometer here. We put cameras on the anemometer systems, the weather stations, just so that we can keep up with everything. And sometimes you see things on the periphery of it that are very interesting. And I'm able to take the Nest image there in my Nest app. These are Google Nest cams we use. And I can pinch zoom and kind of crop and reframe the shot. And that's what I did when I realized, the Steinhatchee, I almost said it wrong. The Steinhatchee is going to really be a big problem. So we're going to be unpacking all this information and what we learned, like I said, for days and weeks to come. All right, so here's the active look to the Atlantic Basin. All kinds of activity up here in the northwest Atlantic. And then we have this tropical wave out here, 94L, I think it is. And then there is more energy over Africa that we need to be watching very, very closely. Of course, the water temperatures are still well above the long-term average here, especially out in the deep tropics through the rest of the southwest Atlantic and the Gulf of Mexico. Though notice, that is what Franklin did, carving away some of those anomalies, but this is what is so extraordinarily important. And this is where the science part of this comes in, where you can really dig behind the scenes of the headlines, the attention-grabbing headlines of Category 4 this or whatever. The hurricane's job is to take heat out of the tropics a couple of ways. One is it literally takes all that heat and moves it up in the northern latitudes. The release of heat into the atmosphere, the condensation process, all that. The other way is by churning up the ocean with its massive wind field and literally taking that heat and ingesting it into the heat engine that we call convection. It's a very simple process. And normally we see a cold wake after one of these goes by. So let me show you what I mean. This is really interesting to me, and I hope you appreciate this. This is the cold wake left from Hillary in the eastern Pacific. This is the cold wake left from Franklin here in the Atlantic. It is so warm in the Atlantic that even a 150 mile per hour hurricane only put a little bit of a dent in these anomalies. So another way to say it, even with Franklin reaching almost Category 5 intensity, it still left an area here of above normal water temperatures on the lower end of the scale, but they are there. It didn't do what Hillary did over here. So the warm water is not just at the surface, it's deeper. So that upper ocean heat content is plentiful, and that is very important to note. In the coming days, I do really want to see what happens up in here, and in the Eastern Gulf. We'll check, should get a new update from this tomorrow. These maps are always a day behind. But yes, the Atlantic is still very, very warm compared to average. There is our El Nino, really not having much of an impact at all on suppressing Atlantic activity. But one has to wonder if the El Nino was much less. If it was a weak El Nino or we were in La Nina, would the Atlantic be more busy? It's hard to say. It is hard to say because sometimes we've had a very warm Atlantic and a very coolish Pacific relative to average, and then other things start to happen. You know, the cool Pacific could lead to more dry air out there, and sometimes that gets pulled over to the Atlantic. You just can't make generalizations like, oh, if the El Nino wasn't there, we'd have 20 named storms by now. We don't know. We're just sitting here looking at what we have, and we are already up to Jose, which is what, 11 or 12, something like that, and it's still August. You know, the last day of August, but still August. So it is important to stay on top of things, and remember, we have a long way to go in the season. So this tweet here from Colorado State University, from Phil Klotzbach of CSU, next 2 weeks looking like above normal activity in the Atlantic Basin. These are some of the parameters and arguments for that. It's currently active now. The EPS, the Ensemble Prediction System from the European, really picking up on another system out here, and then it takes it pretty far into the Southwest Atlantic. We're going to have to see a big key to where that would end up is how fast Idalia gets out of the pattern. And that's what we're going to look at on the operational models in just a minute. And then just the overall upward motion forecast is generally favorable across the Atlantic, especially towards the end of the period over here. This represents time, and then the greens and the different, like the green is favorable, basically. So for the next couple of weeks, there's pretty favorable in the Atlantic, and then not as favorable, but not unfavorable. And so with it being peak season and climatology kicking in and all that, I think things could stay pretty busy. And then the overall shear is forecast. This is really striking. Not what you expect in an El Nino. The shear in the deep tropics here, not really problematic at all. So yeah, the next couple of weeks, 10 days to 2 weeks, probably through September, I think are going to be quite busy in the Atlantic. And to further this, Eric Webb, really thorough post here, full of facts and not what we call hyperbole. That's where that word hype comes from, right? Following Idalia, we have to turn our attention to the strong African wave coming off over West Central Africa. The overall environment for this wave looks very favorable for development over the coming week or so. And there's honestly not a whole lot more you could really ask for this far out in terms of genesis of something to develop. All these check marks, we got an anomalously deep moisture, favorable convectively coupled Kelvin wave. It's like a little shot of Red Bull for the tropics. Favorable deep level wind shear. That's what I just showed you from Philip Klotzbach's tweet. The anomalously warm water temperatures, near peak season climatology, and significant consistent model support, especially from the Euro, EPS, the Ensemble Prediction System. And look, I try to not make these models compete with each other, but the GFS for the genesis of what was going to happen with Idalia blew it. The European was on top of it. Track forecast once it formed, too much to get into today. Verification will happen later, but the Euro did really well with the evolution of Idalia, and it is picking up on this next system here. And just to look at the elements that Eric has with his tweet, that is the system right there that we need to be watching closely as it moves off Africa in the coming days. All this moisture out here with 94L, and then the other graphics in parts of his tweet there to kind of round things out. The models are generally bullish on it. The convectively coupled Kelvin wave, again, just kind of like a shot of Red Bull. And I showed you this already from Dr. Klotzbach's tweet. So just stay on top of things. Don't let it worry you. Just keep watching. That's all we got to do. All right, so here's the GFS from 6Z today, 850 millibars in the atmosphere. I like this layer. 850 is about 5,000 feet up. And this shows you sort of the low-level structure of our tropical systems out there. And let's just see what's what. There's 94L right there, big envelope of energy. We have Gert and Jose right here, really close to each other, very small. There's Franklin still showing up considerably well in the low-level model fields. And then here is Idalia kind of transitioning, changing its overall structure as it comes off of the North Carolina coast. So let's put this into motion here, frame by frame, over the next several days. Franklin finally gets out of there. We have more activity out in the East Atlantic, but watch what happens, especially here with Idalia. How quickly it leaves the pattern, like I said, is going to really be I think, a big factor in what happens with our system coming off Africa in a few days. So it kind of hangs around there as high pressure comes in kind of over the north here, not much troughiness, got ridging over here. It's just kind of blocked. Idalia is sitting there, dwindling away off the east coast of the United States. This is well out into the future, by the way. Let's just go to a week. So some remnants of it are still out here. All right? That is the GFS. What does the Euro show? This is the Euro from 6 hours previous, 0Z last night, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, for its initialization. And watch the same different players. So Idalia comes off, and then it kind of hangs out and tries to pinwheel back. This is a week out right there. That's where we'll stop. This is really interesting, not necessarily in a good way, but it has implications for the future of the system that's down here, right? Because you can't have a cyclone up here chewing away the ridge and then expect something like this to make it all the way to the west. Doesn't mean it can't happen, but it usually doesn't. You have to have these cyclones, these tropical cyclones, get out of the way so the ridge builds back in. But what the Euro is suggesting that'll happen over the next week is that Idalia gets here. I tell you, this telestrator sometimes irritates me. It gets kind of trapped up here off the coast of New England, which could be very problematic. And look, it strengthens it again right about there. That's about 6 days out. So this could be with us for a while. We got to watch this. If that ridge building over the top of it, you can see the low level part of the ridge right there trapping it. And if it's stronger, we might, just might, have to deal with Idalia again in New England. Can you believe that? I don't know if you heard it here first. Maybe somebody else has picked up on this, but this is the first that I'm really seeing it. You know, I mean, I looked at it this morning in my prep work, but dang. And then if it stays around too long, so to speak, it erodes the ridge, and then this next system could have a pretty easy escape route. But at day 10 here, this is pretty far out in time. We've got to give the Euro credit. It's done really well lately. There are signs that the ridge is trying to build back in. Again, this is the lower levels of the atmosphere right about here. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have a lot to keep our eyes on over the coming days. We really, really do. So, that's what we're going to do. Let me kind of get out and prepare for my exit here with a couple of commentary things or whatever. So, yeah, we do have a lot to keep an eye on. So, first of all, thank you to all of the folks that tuned in during our coverage. It's great to pick up the new subscribers to the YouTube channel. And you know, seriously, it's not about engagement or likes or shares or even the monetization. Yes, this is my job. I absolutely enjoy teaching people what I know and taking my experience and translating into actionable information for you. The fact that you help me by watching the videos, sharing the videos, and even supporting what we do through Patreon or whatever the case may be, that is the gravy that comes with the wonderful mashed potatoes, right? That's all the metaphors you could come up with for positivity. It is a great, great thing. And I appreciate it very much. My team appreciates it. We have people asking questions, emailing, texting. We have our Discord that's a wonderful community, part of our Patreon. And it's just incredibly humbling to have the kind of support with only the smallest amount of negativity. There's always going to be negativity. A few non-believers, a few trolls that are just angry with the world, I guess, in general. But for us, it is truly very small. It is. It's amazing. I see some of the other personalities that are out there, and they attract a much larger negativity crowd for whatever reason. I don't know. I'm not a psychologist. But for our project and our community, I'm just very grateful that we have you, and I appreciate the support and everybody tuning in and trusting us, all the people that we have met along the way. It is remarkable, and me and the whole team here, and my family included, we all appreciate that support from you 100%, 100 plus, right? All right, it's time for me to get this online and then start working on going to pick up the equipment. We have GoPros that we put out that captured some of these impacts from Idalia in 4K. So we got to go get those and see how everybody's doing that we met Tuesday and Monday and whatever. All right, you guys have a great rest of your Thursday. From all of us at Hurricane Track, I'm Mark Sutta. Thanks for tuning in. Of course, I'll be back with more for you tomorrow.